My name is Lena Harwood, and I was 38 years old the night my life split cleanly into a before and an after. It didn't start with a dramatic fight or a suspicious message. It started with something painfully ordinary, a text from my boyfriend Thomas. Staying at Terry's tonight. Guys' night. Don't wait up. Love you. I was curled up on the couch eating leftover pasta and half watching a documentary I'd already seen twice. Nothing about his message felt strange. Thomas had guys' nights every few weeks, cheap beer, video games, questionable pizza. I replied, "Have fun." Set my phone aside and fully expected that to be the end of it. For the first hour it was. Then boredom happened. It sounds ridiculous to say that boredom changed my life, but that's exactly what happened. I remembered the location sharing app Thomas insisted we keep turned on for safety after some true crime obsession of his. I opened it without a second thought. His location popped up immediately, except it wasn't near Terry's apartment. It wasn't even in the city. His little blue dot sat 200 miles away, next to a lake in a rural area filled with cottages and rental cabins. I stared at the screen, blinked, refreshed it. It didn't move. I told myself it had to be a glitch. But glitches don't usually come in pairs. A sinking feeling started to gather in my stomach as I opened our joint credit card app. 2 charges had posted recently. $450, Cottage Haven Rentals. $195, the Lakeside Ember Restaurant. Both located in the exact area where Thomas's location kept pulsing like a warning light. I wasn't emotional yet. Shock has a way of freezing everything. If anything, I felt like someone had switched off all my internal noise, leaving a strange, sharp silence in its place. Still, I told myself I needed more proof. So I opened Instagram. And there it was, Sienna's story. Thomas's personal trainer. The woman he'd started spending suspiciously long training sessions with. The woman he swore was just helping him stay disciplined. Her post was a glowing sunset over a lake. The exact same lake. She even tagged the location. That was the moment everything inside me clicked into place, not with screaming or crying, but with a cold, precise clarity I didn't know I possessed. In 20 minutes, I had thrown clothes into a duffel bag, grabbed my laptop, and driven to a 24-hour print shop. I printed screenshots of Thomas's text, his location, the credit card charges, and Sienna's Instagram story. The clerk probably thought I was preparing a murder board. He didn't ask questions, and I didn't care. By the time I got on the highway, it was nearly 9 p.m. The 4-hour drive was a blur, no music, no crying, just the hum of the engine and the quiet understanding that the relationship I had carried for 6 years was already dead. When I finally reached the lake, the road was empty and washed in moonlight. The cottage was easy to find, 2 cars parked outside Thomas's sedan and Sienna's expensive, impractical coupe. I parked far enough away that my engine wouldn't alert them, took photos of both cars, and approached with the steadiness of someone who had crossed the line between heartbreak and icy resolve. Before confronting them, I did one more thing. I called the emergency number for the rental company. "Hi," I said, calm enough to startle myself. "I need to report fraudulent use of my credit card. Someone rented a cottage without my authorization." The man on the line hesitated. "If it's a joint card." "I'm the primary card holder," I interrupted. "Cancel it." Another pause. "We can cancel the reservation, but the guests will need to vacate immediately." "Good," I said and hung up. I waited by my car, watching the dark windows of the cottage. After 20 minutes, lights flicked on. The front door opened. Thomas stepped out first, wearing nothing but sweatpants, hair disheveled. Sienna stood behind him in a robe, arms crossed, clearly annoyed. They were arguing with someone, probably the manager I'd spoken to. Then Thomas turned, and the porch light illuminated me. He froze like someone had hit him with a tranquilizer dart. I walked forward slowly, holding the folder full of printed evidence at my side. "Hey, Thomas," I said. "How's guys' night?" His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. Sienna stiffened behind him, suddenly aware that this wasn't going to be a fun conversation for anyone on her side of the porch. "I can explain," Thomas finally whispered. "No," I said, stepping into the porch light. "You really can't." I handed him the folder. "I have screenshots of your location, the credit card charges, her Instagram story, and your text lying to my face. I also have a lawyer consultation at 9 a.m. All communication from this moment on goes through attorneys." He looked like he might collapse. Sienna looked like she'd prefer I evaporate on the spot. I turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and enjoy finding a hotel at 1 in the morning. The reservation's been canceled." I walked to my car, got in and drove away while Thomas stood on the porch in stunned silence. My hands didn't start shaking until I was halfway home. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the sky was just beginning to lighten. It felt surreal stepping back into my own home after the night. I'd just lived like everything around me belonged to someone else, a woman who still believed her boyfriend was out having beers with his friends instead of sharing a lakeside cottage with his personal trainer. I showered, changed clothes, and drove straight to the law office. No sleep, no food, just adrenaline and a folder full of proof. The attorney I met with, Marissa Bolton, was direct and quietly sharp, the kind of woman whose presence alone made you sit straighter. I handed her the folder. She flipped through it, silently nodding occasionally. When she reached the screenshots of Thomas and Sienna stepping out of the cottage, her mouth curved into something close to satisfaction. This, she said, tapping the stack, is clear misuse of shared funds for an affair. You have an extremely strong case. Within an hour, papers were drafted. By noon, we had filed. By evening, Thomas was officially being served. I drove home in a fog, feeling like I was watching someone else move through the motions of my life. When I reached my front door, I changed the locks exactly as Marissa recommended. It felt cold at first, then strangely relieving. 3 days later, the process server found Thomas at the gym. And I won't pretend I didn't feel something when I heard how it went, him standing there in front of Sienna and half the weight room while the server handed him the envelope. The humiliation looked good on him, just not good enough to erase what he'd done. That afternoon, I was folding laundry when I heard someone rattling aggressively at the front door. A second later, pounding. Lena, open the door right now. Thomas's voice panicked and loud. I didn't move. The door camera caught everything for me. You can drop off a request through your lawyer, I said through the speaker. You changed the locks. You can't just lock me out of my own house. You left and stayed with someone else for days. You established residence elsewhere. If you think I'm wrong, call the police. He did. 2 officers showed up an hour later while Thomas paced in the driveway like he was preparing to sprint a marathon. I stepped outside with a copy of the filing. Officers were in the middle of a legal separation. I've consulted an attorney. These are the documents. He has not lived here for 3 days. Thomas cut in. She's abandoning me. She's making me homeless. The older officer sighed a tired, heavy sigh that said he'd seen far too many cases just like this. Sir, this is a civil matter. You need to handle it through the courts. You cannot force entry during a separation proceeding. You're taking her side, he demanded. No, the officer said we're following the law. Thomas's face twisted with frustration. When they finally left, he screamed something I didn't bother to listen to and stormed off to his car. I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. The next day, his mother showed up. She didn't knock. She didn't call. She simply marched up to my door and began yelling like I had personally set her son on fire. You heartless woman, open this door and face me like a decent human being. I didn't bother opening it. I spoke through the camera again. Mrs. Reed, I'm not discussing this with you. My son made one mistake and you're destroying his life. One mistake is forgetting a birthday. This was lying, cheating, manipulating me for months and using our money to do it. She scoffed. He loves you. He loved Sienna more last weekend. Her face twisted in furious disbelief. You're cruel. Cruel. We'll take everything from you in court. Good luck, I said calmly. See you there. She stood on my porch shouting for nearly half an hour before finally leaving. That night, Thomas's lawyer sent a letter demanding that I move out of the house, that he be granted exclusive use of it during proceedings, that I pay him $500 in monthly temporary support, that he receive both cars even though both titles were in my name. And the worst one, he wanted full custody of my dog, Finn, the dog I'd had since college, the dog Thomas barely remembered to feed. When I showed the letter to Marissa, she actually laughed. The entitlement, she said, shaking her head, is astonishing. Our response will be one sentence, absolutely not. Before we could send it, something else happened. My bank called. Ms. Harwood. There was an attempted transfer of $15,000 from your joint account to a newly linked external account. We flagged it as suspicious. My heart dropped. He tried to steal it. It appears so. Do you want to freeze the account? Yes, I said. Freeze everything. Remove his access until the legal paperwork catches up. The bank acted immediately. Within minutes, my phone exploded with notifications, texts from Thomas, his mother, his sister, even friends I hadn't heard from in years. How is Thomas supposed to survive? Why did you freeze the account? You're taking everything from him. He's devastated. You're being cruel. I sent one reply, and only one. He tried to steal $15,000. This is called protecting my assets. Then I blocked every single one of them. I thought that was enough drama for one day. Then the phone rang again. A new number. It was Sienna, her tone dripping with cultivated moral superiority. Lena, you need to chill. Thomas is going through a really hard time. It took effort not to laugh. He cheated on me with you, using my money. Hard times are kind of part of the package. You're ruining his life. No, I said. He ruined his own. And then I hung up. But I wasn't done with her either. Because earlier that morning, I had filed a complaint with her gym's corporate office for violating their professional conduct policy, specifically the one about sleeping with clients. They fired her 2 days later. Sienna getting fired should have been the end of that chapter, but of course it wasn't. People like her and Thomas don't simply disappear when consequences finally find them. They thrash, scream, claw, and try to drag everyone else down with them. 2 hours after she lost her job, she called me from another unknown number. You got me fired, she snapped the moment I picked up. No greeting, no breath. Pure outrage. Do you know how unhinged that is? You violated your contract, I said. I didn't fire you. Your choices did. You're obsessed with punishing us. This is psychotic behavior. Bold accusation from someone who spent a weekend in a rented cottage with another woman's boyfriend. There was a beat of silence before she hissed, "You're going to regret this." I doubt it, I said, and hung up. It didn't take long for Thomas to get involved. My phone lit up with messages from every burner number he could find. You destroyed her life. You're taking this too far. Just talk to me like a human being. Please, Lena, don't do this. I need you. Every message felt like a brick being thrown at my window. I blocked each number the moment it arrived. Eventually, silence returned, at least digitally. But trouble was still brewing. 3 days later, we had our first hearing. Thomas arrived with his mother and sister flanking him like he was being escorted to a royal funeral, dressed in all black eyes, puffy for maximum sympathy. Their lawyer launched into a dramatic speech about how I had cruelly locked Thomas out, how I had cut him off financially, how he had been left with no access to necessities. Then my lawyer Marissa stood up, dead calm, precise, surgical. She handed the judge a thick packet, the same folder I had assembled during that sleepless night. Screenshots, timestamps, charges, photos, everything. Your Honor, Marissa began, my client's boyfriend told her he was staying with friends. Instead, he spent a weekend at a lakeside cottage with another woman paid for with marital funds. Upon confrontation, he voluntarily stayed with his mother for 3 days. My client changed the locks under legal advice. That is not abandonment. That is the protection of assets, home, and safety. The judge looked at Thomas. Is this accurate? He asked. Thomas swallowed. It's complicated. That's not what I asked, the judge replied. Did you go to this cottage with another woman while telling your partner something else? After a painful silence, yes. The judge turned to me. Motion denied. He chose to leave. If he wishes to access property, he can file a separate request. Sienna wasn't mentioned, but her existence hung over Thomas's head like a neon sign. When we stepped outside the courthouse, his mother stormed toward me. You manipulative liar, she snapped. You twisted everything. You embarrassed him in there. I presented facts, I said. Your son did the rest. He's suffering, don't you care? He's suffering consequences, I replied. That's not the same thing. His sister chimed in. He told us how you watched everything he did. You controlled him. I raised an eyebrow. So he's been painting me as the villain for a while then? Good to know. They continued shouting, but I simply turned and walked away. That afternoon, Thomas showed up at my office building. Security called me first. Ma'am, there's a man downstairs claiming to be your partner. He says it's an emergency. I met them in the lobby. Thomas looked awful disheveled, red-eyed, pacing like a trapped animal. Lena, he said, voice cracking. I need my medication. It's at the house. You can text me the prescription details, I said. I'll have the pharmacy deliver it to your mother's address. I need my clothes, my things, please. Make a list, I replied. Send it through your lawyer. We'll schedule a supervised pickup. You're heartless, he whispered. You don't even recognize yourself. I almost laughed at that. You spent 6 years letting me handle everything I said. Bills, plans, stability. And when I worked 60-hour weeks so you could find yourself, you found Sienna instead. You lied for months, cheated for months, and tried to steal $15,000. So no, Thomas, you're right. I don't recognize myself anymore. I'm done letting you walk all over me. Security escorted him out while he muttered insults under his breath. Things escalated again a week later. During financial discovery, Marissa found something Thomas had forgotten to mention, an undisclosed bank account. One he'd opened 2 years earlier. One he'd quietly fed with small transfers, $200 here, $300 there from our shared account. By the time we found it, it was holding nearly $19,000. When this was presented in court, Thomas's lawyer tried to argue it was personal savings. Marissa countered immediately. It's dissipation of shared funds. The judge agreed. Account frozen. All financial documents must be disclosed. Further non-disclosure will lead to sanctions. Thomas's face lost all color. For the next 2 days, he left me over 70 missed calls, all blocked, all ignored. Then came the final blow for him, at least. The gym's corporate office reached back out to Marissa. The complaint against Sienna had triggered a larger investigation. It turned out Thomas wasn't her first married client. She had done this twice before. Corporate banned her from the entire chain. Her certification was flagged. Job offers vanished. Thomas tried to contact me again, angry, desperate, pathetic in every message. You ruined her career. You ruined our lives. You destroyed everything. I sent one final text before blocking him permanently. You both ruined your own lives. I just stopped cleaning up after you. And that was that. But the war wasn't over. It was just getting organized. The first month after the cottage confrontation felt like living inside a legal battlefield. Every day brought a new demand, a new accusation, or a new attempt from Thomas to claw back some kind of leverage. The man who once couldn't remember to buy laundry detergent was suddenly filing legal motions like he was preparing for a televised trial. The worst part wasn't the chaos. It was how familiar his tactics began to feel. The excuses, the pity grabs, the dramatic retellings of reality. I'd lived with this man for years. I had just never seen the full scope of his manipulation when it wasn't aimed at me alone. The second hearing revealed the shift more clearly. Thomas's lawyer had begun filing constant delays, extensions, clarifications, additional evidence requests. My attorney Marissa called it the desperation strategy. The goal was simple: drag things out, make it expensive, drain me until I agreed to something stupid. But I refused to break. Financially, it wasn't easy. Legal fees stacked like bricks. But emotionally, something inside me had snapped cleanly the night I saw Thomas and Sienna on that porch. That clean break had given me clarity I'd never had before. Thomas, on the other hand, was unraveling. His job performance tanked. Marissa discovered through disclosures that he'd taken 3 stress leave days since being served. His manager had reprimanded him twice. He had been written up for disappearing during shifts. And his mother didn't help. She hovered over him like a helicopter with a broken rotor, loud, intrusive, and constantly spinning out of control. According to mutual acquaintances, she'd moved from anger at me to anger at Thomas to anger at the universe. Nothing satisfied her. Nothing soothed him. Meanwhile, the fallout with Sienna became its own slow-burning wildfire. They tried to keep whatever mess they had going, but without her job and without Thomas's access to the joint account, their little fantasy fell apart faster than it had formed. The two of them argued constantly. Neighbors reported shouting matches. One night, apparently, Sienna threw a planter at him. They broke up 5 weeks after he got her fired. Once she was gone, Thomas's desperation turned inward. The messages he sent through mutual friends evolved from anger to pleading, even pathetic sentimentality. Tell Lena I miss her. Tell her I want to talk. Tell her she misunderstood everything. Tell her I'm in therapy. That last one almost made me laugh. Thomas had always sworn therapy wasn't his thing, but the moment he realized he might lose everything, suddenly emotional growth was his brand new hobby. I ignored all of it. The last time I broke no contact was when a friend sent me a screenshot of Thomas's Instagram story. It was a black and white photo of a quote, "Sometimes the people you love the most hurt you the worst." He posted it over a photo of his own tear-streaked face. I didn't respond, but I did block him on every platform I'd missed before. If Thomas was a downward spiral, I was slowly rebuilding the ground under my feet. I threw myself into work and my routine. Finn, my dog, seemed to sense the shift. He'd follow me around the house, more often settling beside me every evening. I found comfort in quiet things: long showers, grocery store errands, clean sheets, morning coffee, small routines that belonged only to me. I also started therapy. Not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand how I had stayed in something so hollow for so long. My therapist pointed out something I'd never considered: that Thomas had relied on me. The same way a child relies on a parent, expecting stability, presence, emotional labor, and never giving anything meaningful in return. "You didn't lose a partner," she said during one session. "You finally stepped away from raising a grown man." She wasn't wrong. The 3rd month was when the legal tide turned completely. The judge, clearly tired of Thomas's delays, set a firm trial date and refused further motions for extension. It was a blow Thomas couldn't afford financially or emotionally. His lawyer likely explained that once trial began, everything would enter public record. The affair, the cottage, the fraudulent credit card use, the hidden $19,000 account. The attempted $15,000 transfer, the gym firing, his mother's behavior, every text, photo, and screenshot. 2 weeks later, a settlement offer arrived. Not generous, not fair, just desperate. Marissa told me to wait, they'd fold again. She was right. The second offer was livable. The third was reasonable. The fourth was the one we accepted. Thomas's face in mediation looked like someone had hollowed him out. His mother sat beside him, pinched and furious. His sister wouldn't even look at me. Marissa leaned over at one point and whispered, "He thought you'd break. He never imagined you'd outlast him." By now, Thomas had moved back into his mother's house. Word around our old circle was that the two of them fought constantly. She blamed him for everything, he blamed everyone else. He'd been passed over for a promotion he'd been bragging about for months. His friends had distanced themselves uncomfortable with the drama, and he was barely holding together financially. Once Sienna was gone, he couldn't maintain the illusion of stability anymore. I wasn't celebrating his downfall. I wasn't rooting for it. I was simply watching a man unravel under the weight of his own decisions. And then, near the end of the 4th month, the strangest thing happened. One of Thomas's closest friends, the only one who'd stayed neutral through all the chaos, asked if I wanted to pass along a message. "Thomas wants to apologize," he said. "Genuinely. Not for court. For real." I didn't even need to think. I shook my head. "No," I said. "I don't need anything from him." The friend looked relieved, honestly. "I thought you'd say that." At that point, it was clear the war was ending. The only thing left was the final settlement and the emotional debris Thomas refused to face. But I had faced mine, piece by piece, layer by layer, quietly, steadily, privately. And for the first time in months, I felt something like peace. The storm was passing. Only one chapter was left. The morning the settlement was finalized, I woke up before the alarm. Finn, sensing the shift in energy, followed me everywhere into the kitchen, by the bathroom door, back to the bedroom as I got dressed. It felt like he knew this wasn't just another hearing. Something in the air was different. Marissa met me outside the courthouse, as calm and composed as ever. "Today should go smoothly," she assured me. "He can't afford a trial. He knows it." She was right. Inside the mediation room, Thomas looked older than he had any right to at 39. Exhausted. Defeated. His mother sat beside him in a blazer that probably cost more than 2 months of her mortgage, glaring at me like I had single-handedly collapsed their entire bloodline. I didn't look at her. I didn't look at him much either. The judge reviewed the terms, and everything fell into place one piece at a time. The house. To avoid trial, we agreed to sell it. After the bank took its share, we each walked away with about $82,000. Thomas wanted more, claiming he'd done emotional labor to make it a home. The judge didn't entertain it, especially after the hidden account was factored in as advanced distribution of marital assets. The cars. Both were titled in my name, but Thomas demanded the newer one. He didn't get it. He received the older sedan, still reliable, just not impressive. I kept the truck. Thomas glowered like the vehicle itself had betrayed him. The dog. Thomas fought hard for Finn, claiming he was emotionally attached and needed him for stability. I had every adoption record, every vet bill, every microchip document showing Finn was mine years before Thomas existed in my life. The judge didn't hesitate. Dog goes to Ms. Harwood. Thomas broke. I watched him wipe his eyes while his mother rubbed his back, shooting me a look of pure venom. But even she couldn't argue the documentation. Retirement accounts. This part stung. I took a loss of nearly $38,000. That's just how the law works. I accepted it. Somehow it felt almost symbolic, letting go of something I'd been contributing to, while he contributed nothing but chaos. Support. Thomas wanted $3,500 a month for 5 years. He got $100 a month for 18 months, specifically labeled as rehabilitative support so he could gain employment skills. He cried when that was announced. Real tears. Not for me, not for the pain he caused, but because he'd just realized the free financial ride he expected was over. Debt. We discovered Thomas had $7,500 in secret credit card debt, closed restaurants, God knows what else. His lawyer tried to argue it was mutual household spending. The judge didn't buy it. It's his debt, she ruled. He sagged in his chair. And then it was done. Just like that, the legal war that had consumed 7 months of my life evaporated with the scratch of a pen. Thomas slumped across the table like someone had drained all the air out of him. His mother muttered something about injustice under her breath. His sister avoided my eyes completely. Marissa closed her file, nodded once, and whispered, "You won." But it didn't feel like winning. It felt like breathing after being underwater for too long. the air burning a little on the way in because you'd been deprived of it for so long. I walked out of the courthouse into a warm afternoon. Finn was waiting in the car with a friend who had volunteered to dog sit. He perked up the second he saw me tail wagging like nothing in the world had ever gone wrong. For the first time in months, I felt light. The aftermath hit Thomas harder than even the settlement suggested. The fall. Sienna had been gone for weeks. After getting fired, she attempted to salvage whatever was left between them, but once Thomas couldn't cover dinners, trips, or any version of excitement, she vanished. Their connection lasted exactly as long as the cottage rental. He moved back in with his mother permanently. Mutual friends said it was miserable. She expected him to get a job, contribute, show initiative, while he expected sympathy and comfort. They clashed constantly. His social circle faded too. People didn't want to be associated with the scandal, especially once the gym's corporate investigation expanded and revealed he wasn't Sienna's first married client. The chain banned her, and Thomas was quietly discouraged from renewing his membership. He was stuck, floundering, angry, and unmoored. My rebuilding. I bought a smaller house. Not glamorous, not big, but it was mine, just mine. Payments were manageable. The mortgage was half what the old one had been. Work became easier when I wasn't carrying someone else's weight. I even got a promotion a few months and a $12,000 raise. My boss commented that I seemed focused and sharper. Freed from chaos, apparently I could finally use my full brain again. Therapy helped too. Not with grief. I hadn't grieved Thomas in months, but with understanding the patterns that led me to tolerate so much from him. My therapist told me something that stuck. When your baseline is chaos disguised as love, peace feels suspicious at first. She was right, but slowly I learned to trust the quiet. The new relationship. I started seeing someone new near the end of the 6th month. Very slowly, very cautiously. He knew the whole story. His first reaction? Wait, he cheated, lied, used your money, stole from you, blamed you, and then tried to play victim. And people actually bought it. I smiled for the first time in what felt like ages. That's about the summary. He shook his head. Then you're stronger than I realized. We aren't rushing anything. I'm not ready for that. But he respects boundaries. He pays his own bills. He answers questions directly. And he listens. Those qualities feel luxurious now. The final thread. 3 weeks after the settlement, Thomas tried to send an apology through a mutual friend. He wanted closure and one last conversation. I sent back a single message. We're done. I don't need anything from you. Move on. And that was that. The cottage had been 7 months ago. The divorce-like separation was finalized. The noise was gone. The chaos was gone. For the first time in years,